The old man sat alone, the silence of his study a heavy shroud. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of late afternoon sun, illuminating the faded photograph clutched in his trembling hand. A young woman, her smile radiant, her eyes full of a mischievous light. Maria. Her name, a whisper from the past, still carried a faint echo of pain, a phantom ache in his chest. 65 years old, Arthur Sterling had achieved everything society deemed successful: a thriving business, a respectable marriage, 2 grown children. Yet, beneath the polished veneer of his life, a question gnawed at him, relentless and unforgiving. Did he refuse true love? The cost of his biggest mistake. The photograph, curled at the edges, was a portal. It transported him back to a summer that shimmered with possibility, a time when choices felt boundless and consequences distant. He was 22 then, fresh out of university, brimming with ambition and a naive certainty about his future. He'd met Maria at a local art exhibition, her vibrant paintings mirroring her spirit. She was an artist, a free spirit, her world a kaleidoscope of colors and emotions. He, a pragmatic young man, saw the world in blueprints and spreadsheets, a clear, logical progression. Their attraction was immediate, a magnetic pull that defied their differences. He remembered the scent of her paint, a heady mix of turpentine and possibility, the way her laughter would ripple through the air, light and unburdened. He remembered the feeling of her hand in his, a spark that ignited something deep within him, something he hadn't known existed. Their courtship was a whirlwind. Long walks by the river, discussions that stretched late into the night, sharing dreams and fears under a canopy of stars. Maria saw a depth in him that others missed, a yearning for something beyond the material. She encouraged his nascent interest in poetry, a secret passion he kept hidden from his father, a man who valued only tangible achievements. With Maria, he felt seen, truly seen for the first time. He remembered one particular evening, a picnic by the old oak tree on Miller's Hill. The sunset painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, a masterpiece only nature could create. Maria, her head resting on his shoulder, spoke of their future, a small cottage by the sea, filled with art and laughter. Her words, soft and hopeful, wove a tapestry of a life he hadn't dared to imagine. A life vibrant, unconventional, and utterly hers. But Arthur's world was already charted, a rigid map laid out by his family's expectations. His father, a formidable industrialist, had plans for him, a legacy to uphold, a prestigious law firm, a suitable marriage, a path paved with security and influence. Maria, with her bohemian spirit and uncertain income, didn't fit into that meticulously crafted future. He loved her, he knew that. A love that felt like a wild, untamed thing, bursting through the carefully constructed walls of his ambition. But fear, a cold, insidious dread began to creep in. Fear of disappointing his father, fear of instability, fear of straying from the path he believed was destined for him. The first cracks appeared subtly. He started to make excuses, prioritizing business meetings over their dates, his explanations becoming increasingly hollow. Maria, always perceptive, noticed the shift. Her bright eyes, once full of unreserved joy, now held a flicker of concern, a question she didn't voice. He remembered a Sunday afternoon, a visit to her small studio apartment. The air was thick with the smell of oil paints, and her latest canvas, a vibrant cityscape, stood on an easel. She turned to him, her face serious. "Arthur," she began, her voice soft, "are you happy with the way things are going?" He mumbled a non-committal answer, his gaze fixed on the painting, avoiding her eyes. The question hung in the air, heavy and unanswered. The pressure intensified. His father, sensing a distraction, began to subtly push him towards a more suitable companion, Eleanor Vance, the daughter of a prominent judge. Eleanor was everything his family approved of, poised, intelligent, from a respectable lineage. She represented stability, predictability, the very opposite of Maria's vibrant unpredictability. He found himself caught between two worlds, two futures, each pulling him in opposite directions. He spent less time with Maria, the guilt a constant companion, each missed call, each postponed. Dinner was a brick in the wall he was building between them. He told himself it was for the best, that he was being practical, responsible. But a hollow ache began to settle in his soul. The day he broke up with Maria was etched into his memory with agonizing clarity. It was a rainy autumn afternoon, the sky a dismal grey, mirroring his internal landscape. They met at their favorite coffee shop, the one with the worn wooden tables and the comforting aroma of roasted beans. He remembered the clinking of cups, the low murmur of conversations around them, all fading into a distant hum as he spoke the words that would irrevocably alter his life. He told her he needed to focus on his career, that their worlds were too different, that he couldn't give her the life she deserved. His voice felt alien, detached, as if someone else was speaking. Maria listened, her face pale, her eyes, usually so expressive, now shuttered. A single tear traced a path down her cheek, and in that moment he felt a sharp, unbearable pang of regret, a premonition of the years of emptiness that lay ahead. She didn't argue, didn't plead. She simply nodded, a silent acceptance that cut him deeper than any protest could have. As she stood to leave, her hand brushed his, a fleeting touch that felt like a goodbye to a part of himself. He watched her walk out into the rain, her silhouette fading into the grayness, and a profound silence descended upon him, a silence that would echo through the decades. He married Eleanor a year later. Their wedding was a grand affair, a testament to his family's position. Eleanor was a good wife, an excellent hostess, and a devoted mother to their two children, David and Sarah. Their life together was comfortable, predictable, and devoid of the passionate spark he had once shared with Maria. He excelled in his career, rising through the ranks, building a formidable business empire. He had the house, the cars, the societal approval he had so desperately sought. But the hollow ache remained, a constant, low thrum beneath the surface of his perfectly ordered life. He often found himself staring out of his office window, lost in thought, a faint image of Maria's radiant smile flickering in his mind's eye. He wondered what she was doing, where she was, if she ever thought of him. He never sought her out, a cowardice born of fear and a strange sense of shame. He had made his choice, and he lived with its quiet, persistent weight. Years passed. His children grew up, went to university, started their own lives. He watched them, a sense of pride mingling with a wistful longing. He saw fragments of Maria in their independent spirits, their artistic inclinations. Sarah, his daughter, had inherited a passion for painting, her canvases vibrant and expressive. He encouraged her, a silent act of atonement, a way to nurture the creativity he had once stifled in himself. David, his son, possessed a quiet strength, a sense of conviction that reminded him of Maria's unwavering spirit. He often wondered what kind of father he would have been with Maria, what kind of life they would have built together. Would it have been chaotic, perhaps financially uncertain, but filled with a joy and authenticity that his current life lacked? Eleanor passed away peacefully in her sleep when they were both in their early 60s. Her death left a void, a familiar absence, but not the searing, soul-deep grief he imagined he would have felt if he had lost Maria. He mourned Eleanor truly for the companionship and stability she had provided, but a part of him felt a strange sense of release, a lifting of the unspoken expectations that had governed his life for so long. The silence in the house became even more profound, and the memories of Maria, once relegated to the furthest corners of his mind, began to resurface with increasing frequency and vividness. He started visiting art galleries again, a quiet pilgrimage. He would linger in front of abstracts, searching for a trace of her brushstrokes, a whisper of her style. He never found her work, but the act of searching, the quiet contemplation of art, brought a strange sense of solace. He wondered if she was still painting, if her vibrant spirit had found its canvas. He often walked by the old coffee shop, peering through the window, half expecting to see her there, her head bent over a sketchbook, a faint smile playing on her lips. It was a foolish hope, he knew, a desperate yearning for a past that was irretrievably lost. One crisp autumn afternoon, he found himself drawn to the old oak tree on Miller's Hill, the site of their picnic so many years ago. The tree stood majestic, its leaves a riot of fiery reds and golds. He sat beneath its sprawling branches, the cool breeze rustling through the leaves, a sound that seemed to carry echoes of Maria's laughter. He closed his eyes, and a torrent of memories washed over him. Her hand in his, the taste of cheap wine, her dreams whispered against his ear. He felt the full weight of his choice, the profound regret that had been a silent companion for decades. He had chosen security over passion, expectation over authenticity. He had chosen a life that was comfortable, but ultimately unfulfilled. He opened his eyes, a single tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. He had refused true love. The realization, though long suspected, hit him with renewed force. He had traded a life of vibrant connection for one of quiet contentment, and the cost, he now understood, was immeasurable. Was there still time? The question echoed in the vast silence of the hill. Time for what? To find her? To apologize? To simply know if she was happy? He didn't know. He only knew that the yearning had become unbearable. A few weeks later, a casual conversation with a former university classmate, Robert, reignited a flicker of hope. Robert, a retired art historian, mentioned a renowned artist, Maria Rodriguez, whose work had recently been featured in a retrospective at a gallery downtown. Her early pieces, Robert said, his eyes alight with admiration, they have a raw, almost youthful energy, full of life. Arthur's heart hammered against his ribs. Maria Rodriguez. Could it be her? He asked Robert for details, trying to keep his voice steady, his excitement carefully masked. Robert, oblivious to Arthur's internal turmoil, provided the gallery's name and the dates of the exhibition. The next day, Arthur, his heart a drumbeat in his chest, walked into the gallery. The space was bright, airy, filled with the hushed reverence of art lovers. He scanned the walls, his gaze darting from one painting to another, searching, and then he saw it. A painting, vibrant and alive, a cityscape that mirrored the one he had seen in her studio so many years ago. The style was unmistakable, the colors bold, the brush strokes confident. It was her, Maria. A small plaque beneath the painting confirmed it. Maria Rodriguez. He felt a surge of emotions, relief, joy, and a profound sadness for the lost years. He spent hours in the gallery, moving from one of her pieces to another, each one a testament to her talent, her unwavering spirit. Her art was a window into her soul, a soul that was still vibrant, still full of life. He learned from a gallery assistant that Maria Rodriguez was still alive, living a quiet life in a small coastal town, still painting. The information was a beacon in the darkness of his regret. He knew what he had to do. He had to see her, even if it was just to say hello, to acknowledge the past, to perhaps finally find some measure of peace. He found her address through discreet inquiries, his heart both hopeful and terrified. What would he say? What would she say? Would she even remember him? Would she forgive him? The drive to the coastal town felt endless. The road wound through picturesque landscapes, but Arthur saw little of it, his mind consumed by the impending encounter. He pulled up to a charming cottage, its garden bursting with colorful flowers, a faint scent of salt and honeysuckle in the air. A small sign by the gate read, "Maria Rodriguez, Artist." He took a deep breath, the air cool and bracing, and walked to the front door. He raised his hand to knock, his knuckles trembling slightly. The door opened before he could make contact. Maria stood there, a paint-stained apron tied around her waist, a smudge of blue paint on her cheek. Her silver hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and lines of experience etched around her eyes. But those eyes, those beautiful, mischievous eyes, were still the same. They widened slightly as she recognized him, a flicker of surprise, then something unreadable. "Arthur," she whispered, her voice a little deeper, a little softer than he remembered, but still unmistakably hers. "Maria," he managed, his voice thick with emotion. "It's been a long time." She invited him in, the silence between them heavy, pregnant with unspoken history. The cottage was just as he had imagined, filled with art, light, and a palpable sense of warmth. Canvases leaned against walls, brushes soaked in jars, the air carrying the familiar, comforting scent of paint. They sat in her small, sunlit living room, facing each other across a worn wooden table. He began to speak, haltingly at first, then with a rush of words, pouring out the regret, the emptiness, the profound cost of his choices. He told her about his life, his marriage, his children, but mostly he spoke of her, of the love he had refused, of the constant ache of her absence. Maria listened, her gaze steady, her expression unreadable. When he finished, the silence stretched, punctuated only by the distant cry of gulls. Finally, she spoke, her voice calm, devoid of anger or bitterness. "Arthur," she began, "I remember that summer. I remember us. It was a beautiful time." She paused, a faint smile touching her lips. "I was heartbroken when you left, truly. I thought my world had ended." He flinched, the words a fresh wound. "But," she continued, her voice gaining strength, "I also knew, even then, that we wanted different things. You had a path, a very clear path, and I wasn't on it. I had to find my own way." She told him about her life after he left, the struggle, the persistence, the joy of finally making a living from her art. She had traveled, lived in different cities, found love again, a quiet, steady companionship that had lasted for 20 years, until her husband's passing. She spoke of her own children grown and pursuing their passions. Her life, he realized with a pang, had been full, rich, and authentic. The very life he had feared, she had embraced and thrived within. "I don't regret my choices, Arthur," she said softly, her eyes meeting his. "They led me here, to this life, to this peace." She saw the raw pain in his eyes, the weight of his unburdened regret. "But I understand why you're here. I understand the what-ifs." She reached across the table, her hand gently covering his. Her touch was warm, comforting, and utterly devoid of judgment. "It's never too late, Arthur," she said, her voice a whisper, "to reflect, to heal." He looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not the lost love of his youth, but a woman of immense strength, grace, and wisdom. He saw the life he could have had, but more importantly, he saw the possibility of peace, of finally letting go of the burden he had carried for so long. He had refused true love, yes, but Maria, in her forgiveness and understanding, was offering him something profound, the chance to forgive himself. Their conversation flowed for hours, a tapestry woven with threads of memory, regret, and a quiet understanding. They spoke of art, of life, of the passage of time, and the choices that shape us. He learned of her triumphs, her struggles, the quiet joys that had filled her days. He shared his own experiences, finally able to speak of his deepest feelings without fear of judgment. There was no rekindling of romance, no desperate attempt to recapture a lost past. What they found instead was a profound connection, a shared history, and a mutual respect that transcended the years and the pain. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a familiar scene, Arthur rose to leave. He felt lighter, a weight lifted from his shoulders. "Thank you, Maria," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "Thank you for everything." She smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. "Thank you, Arthur, for coming." He turned to leave, but paused at the door. "Maria," he said, looking back at her, What if I had done things differently? She met his gaze, her eyes holding a depth of understanding. Then, she said, her voice soft, we would have had a different story. Not necessarily better, not necessarily worse, just different. But the important thing, Arthur, is what you do with the story you have now. He nodded, a sense of quiet acceptance settling over him. He walked out of the cottage and into the twilight, the scent of honeysuckle and salt still in the air. The regret was still there, a faint echo, but it was no longer a crushing weight. It was a part of his story, a lesson learned, a reminder of the preciousness of choice and the enduring power of love, even love lost. He knew he couldn't change the past, but he could change how he lived the future. He could embrace authenticity, nurture, connection, and find meaning in the quiet moments that remained. The journey wasn't over. It was simply taking a new turn, illuminated by the gentle glow of understanding and the quiet whisper of redemption. This experience, this encounter with Maria, had made him realize that it is never too late to reflect, to heal, or to understand your own journey. If Maria's story and Arthur's journey of regret and reflection resonated with you, if it made you ponder your own choices and the paths you've taken, then this channel is for you. Pure Emotion is dedicated to stories that speak to the heart, stories of life, love, loss, and the wisdom that comes with time. We believe every life holds a story worth telling, and that it's never too late to find meaning and connection. So, if you're looking for calm, profound narratives that offer comfort and reflection, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Join our community and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue to explore the beautiful, complex tapestry of life together.